Hello there, I'm a robot, and today we are talking about Saint Afra, not Saint Afra. Her birthday is unknown, but we do know she died in the year 305. Unfortunately, the story of Saint Afra is a rather depressing one, as you shall soon see. Before we get into her story, we must first realize that there are multiple different versions of it. The one we will be going over is the most commonly used one, although a different version will be mentioned later on. Our story starts when Afra and her family moved from Cyprus to Augsburg. There they worshipped Venus, an idol, one of the figures approved by the authorities. To make matters worse, Afra and her mother ran a whorehouse. Despite what you might think of her so far, Afra ends up having some morals under all that vice. She and her mother end up providing shelter for Bishop Narcissus. Don't let his name fool you, Narcissus was a good Christian man on the run from authorities. Afra and her mother risked their lives to protect him, and during his stay, Narcissus converts Afra to Christianity. Hiding a man for a long period of time was not all that easy, though. She was placed under suspicion. And what was bound to happen eventually did happen. After some time, she was no longer under suspicion and was instead under arrest. She was caught red-handed harboring a fugitive, and because of one particular Roman emperor, protecting a Christian was a serious crime. The emperor in question was Diocletian, and he was a man on a mission. He was responsible for large-scale Christian persecution. Saint Afra herself was subject to punishment from one of his loyal judges, a man named Gaius. When Afra was brought before Gaius, she was offered a chance to survive. She was ordered to sacrifice to an idol to prove herself. However, Afra refused, even under the threat of dying horribly. To be honest, the smartest thing to do would have been to pretend to repent, but instead Afra decided to be open about her true faith. Well, as was mentioned earlier, Saint Afra's story is not a happy one. Because of her refusal to sacrifice, she was executed by being burned to death. Although it was a pretty common execution for Christians, that didn't stop it from still being a monumental sacrifice in the eyes of those who would come to view her as a martyr. There is also a version of Afra's story where she was decapitated instead of burnt. Although there is no way to know which one is true, let's hope it was this one, because it would be a lot less painful. Unfortunately, it probably isn't the true story. The story gets worse. After Afra's death, her mother and maids attempt to bury her ashes. The authorities didn't like the idea of Afra being respected, and the mother and maids were arrested and similarly killed. A sad end to a sad story. Saint Afra was no Martin Luther. One could argue she wouldn't even be on an elevated status if not for her martyrdom. Because that's all she is, a heroic martyr. She didn't convert anyone, she didn't spread Christianity. Saint Afra is famous purely because she decided she was completely willing to die horribly for her faith, and became an example to Christians.